Hey there, I'm Scott, and this is Tangents. This is actually my third take of doing this. I'm not generally someone who does, as you may have gathered, a lot of editing, and I will even leave in noises and things that, generally speaking, I'm not super proud of them, but I'll leave them in. This time, I had a plane fly by, which sometimes, they fly by often, but sometimes they're really loud, sometimes not. I don't know if it's where they happen to be or atmospheric effects or whatever, but this was a loud one. Um, I was just watching something yesterday on YouTube, and it's by a guy. He has a show called Taking Off. I generally like the show. He's a producer, like he does, film professionally. Has a decent audience on YouTube, all of this kind of stuff. And he was talking a lot about things that he keeps seeing people do that really annoy him. And generally speaking, I don't know, apologies for the train. I have less than like 50 minutes here, so I'm just gonna plow through. I'm sorry. It'd be funny if you can't hear it because it's really obnoxious. Anyway, he has this show, and he's talking about things that he sees people doing that they should really stop. And some of them I'm all aboard with. I get, like one of the things was having a prompter, having a script, doing some editing, this kind of stuff. These are all things that I don't do. And by editing, he meant also specifically like having some B-roll, doing things where you have stuff that just kind of, flows together more. You don't have jump cuts and things like that. I don't do jump cuts as a general rule, although occasionally I'll do them because it's very expedient, and my goal here is not so much to be great at video production, which there's an argument to be made. If you're going to do something, you should do it as well as you possibly can. And I generally, that's my philosophy. With this, it's something where I'm kind of pragmatic too. I have a very limited amount of time. I know probably, if you're watching this, you probably have a limited amount of time too, so you might say, well, why don't you spend some time and kind of tighten things up, Scott? And, he was talking about like rambling and this kind of thing. Rambling is, in some sense, my signature. And I totally, my mom watches these sometimes, and she's had that criticism as well. Like, tighten it up, wind it down. Gil, interestingly, has never had that comment. And in fact, I think part of this thing is just me going on, and you can leave it in the background, and it's kind of perhaps calming. I don't know. But it's an interesting thing because I'm going to defiantly not do a lot of the things that he was talking about. Like one of the things he mentioned is green screen. And I do the green screen here for the black background. I do it for a number of reasons, but if I had a cool space that I didn't mind showing and I could set it up, nicely and conveniently, I probably would use that instead. The spaces that I have here don't really work that well for that. And maybe one day I will change what I do there, but for now, this is it. I'm sorry. If you want something that's showing like my lab space, this is not the right place to go. I do things, like the rambling and not editing and not tightening that stuff up. I could go through the content that I have here, chop it up, squish it down, condense it, get rid of me repeating myself, even maybe have a script. When I do these, by and large, I don't have an outline. Probably comes across because I'm sure I come circling back on things. I miss things very often. Sometimes it annoys me. But the problem is I've tried doing it with a script, and I don't know, I'm just not a very good actor. And I'm not saying that I can't develop that skill, but me reading from a script feels very stilted and woody. And also, I'm sure in time, work on that, flex those muscles, I could get it. But the thing is, I don't really want to. If I had, now don't get me wrong, if I had an infinite amount of time to make these things and I had nothing else that I was doing, then by all means I would write a script. Well, I'm not sure that I would do that even then, but let's just say, hypothetically, write the script, tighten it up, do some editing, put it on a prompter, learn to read it well, learn to light the thing well, work on that kind of stuff, and then take my footage, have some nice B-roll, mix it all together, do some graphics and things like this, and then have something that's pretty nicely produced and tight. There's a part of me that wants to do that, but there's also a part of me that knows that even doing this thing that I'm doing now in the current form takes a ridiculous amount of time and effort. And it's not something, I do within reason what I think is a good, good way of doing it. I'm pretty, I don't narcissistically watch all of the things that I put up, but I do watch a decent number of them. And I don't mind it. It's not, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen by any means. And again, my goal, I've stated this a few times, but my goal here is not to build a giant audience. I certainly, sure as fucking hell, don't want to be sitting here and schlocking some VPN or some other bullshit. Not my interest, not my goal with this thing. It'd be awesome, don't get me wrong, to not have to do other things that I have to do for money. But this is not a thing that I want to monetize, really. It's not a thing that I want, it makes me happy that people watch it. It makes me happy that people listen to it and give me feedback. But it's not something that I really want to pump out in that way. And it's also just, I know myself, I've tried in the past to do more production quality, both with the audio and the video. And it's just not something that's, like, if I do that, you're not going to get anything. It's not going to be a thing that I'm putting out. So, defiantly saying, I get what you're saying, and I not only get it, I totally appreciate and even agree that you know much more than I do on this subject. By all means, I do not claim to be not only don't I claim to be an expert, I concede that this is not the best version of this that it could be. I could be doing something much better. And maybe one day I will. But for now, this is it. I'm content with it. It's kind of a conscious choice not to do more. And it's also a conscious choice to do the green screen and the black background. I honestly, I kind of like the way it looks. The only complaint that I have is that to do a green screen really well would need better lighting and more time as well, and I just don't have that. So someday I might do a more advanced version of this. Someday I might have a space that I'm happier showing. It's possible. And I guess I could show myself sitting at the bench or in front of my whiteboard or something like this. The whiteboard is glass, so you get bounce from the lights. Have to deal with having those out. And all of these other spaces are spaces that are used. So if I set up a lighting rig and I set up all of the camera and this kind of stuff, it's pretty significant in terms of not just the cost while I'm doing it, but the cost while I'm trying to do other work. And I'm just not into that. So one thing, well, that being said, today is the 4th of December, 2020. The thing that I wanted to talk about first, and this is not my topic for today, but I did my first cross-country solo. I've done a number of solo flights already. Started doing cross-country flights. Did a cross-country solo though, from Phoenix to Tucson, to Bryan Field, and then back. Well, Chandler, not Phoenix. Don't want to imply that I'm landing and taking off at Sky Harbor. I've flown over Sky Harbor, and that's plenty. I don't anticipate landing at Sky Harbor anytime soon. I'm not saying I'll never do it, probably not going to happen anytime soon. Certainly not while I'm a student pilot. But I flew on my own to fucking Tucson, which is crazy. And I'll tell you, the part of the thing that makes it crazy is how not crazy it seems. And I will say this, I had GPS. I would not, I could totally do the flight without GPS and just using like pilotage, I think they call it. Visual navigation, this kind of stuff. I could use the VORs and get in with that. But I really, I think it's a good thing to have in your back pocket and to be able to do it if there's an emergency. But I don't frankly need that. I'm quite content not to have it. I'm quite content to have all of this like moving map stuff, put in some waypoints, follow your course. It's just a nice way to do it. I was amazed, honestly, like how not crazy it seemed. I mean, there was certainly a moment, like taking off I've done many times on my own. Flying around the airport, not a big deal. Leave the airport, and then I started having like a oh shit moment where I was, I'm in my climb and I'm going up onto my first waypoint, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh crap, I'm away from the airport. It's like that little kid feeling where you get a little too far from home and you can't see home anymore, and you probably find your way back, but there's a little like my tether's gone and now shit. I remember the first time when I was a kid, we had a wood and like a nature reserve, a forest behind us, and I would walk out there on my own, and I would just go off and wander out and then come back. And I remember the first time when or at least in my mind, it's the first time. Maybe it's just one, maybe I did it a bunch of times and then this one was traumatic, so it's like seared into my memory. But I remember going out, and then you can't see the house, and you get turned around a little bit, and there's a kind of oh fuck moment. And at the time I probably didn't have that word in my vocabulary, but although that's near when I did, because I learned it from National Lampoon's Vacation, which I watched at about the same time. But anyway, you're out there and you're like, ah, crap. And I don't mean that I was like freaking out exactly. I mean, I'm overblowing it. It's not like it was that traumatic. But there's definitely a moment where you're like, I've got to figure out how to get the fuck back. And then I did. And now I'm pretty content going into the woods. The only other time that has ever gotten me is years and years later, and now probably over a decade ago. I was in Oregon on the coast. My ex-wife, she's from there, and I was out hiking by myself, and it's cloudy. So I'm used to hiking in Arizona, and in Arizona when you're hiking, especially like Phoenix area, almost always see the sky. So I know the sun is, like it's not even that I know the sun is over there. I can just feel where it is, which means I have orientation. And you can, in many places, get like there are no obstructions. You can just look and get a pretty good idea of where you are, where you're going, where you were. In this case, it was like a dense forest, overcast, and the kind of overcast where you don't really see where the sun is. And I got turned around where I had no idea, like, is that east or west, north or south? I have no fucking clue. And that freaked me out. That's the only other time I can remember feeling like that. But, get out. And this one was more, I know I can, in principle, do it, but it's a little scary because I'm a little far from home. Get on course, start talking to Phoenix Approach, which is getting easier. It's amazing how much the radio communication, like when you first do it, it's all tying your shoelaces. First do it, fucking impossible. You can see somebody do it, and then you try it, and it's like it doesn't even make sense. How do you do that? It doesn't seem like a thing that works. And then after a while, you get better at it, and you're like, okay, now I can do it. I have to think about it. Eventually, I'm sure it will become like second nature, to the point where, like tying my shoes now, I don't even look down. I can just tie them with my fingers, and then I look down and it's like, oh, I didn't even know what my fingers were doing. It's just like automated to the point where I'm not consciously in the loop for that. You know, at most, maybe I glance down midway to just orient some things, but often not. I'm sure the communication is going to get there. And the first couple of cross countries I did with the flight instructor, it was like, you know, it's crazy how much it feels like everything is on top of you, like bang, 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 bang. And it's so fast, and you're freaked out, and you're like, I don't even know what the fuck to say. And I just practiced saying it like 3 times, and now I have to say it, and I'm like, yeah. But I did it on my own, and it was actually, you know, not perfect, but from the perspective of anyone listening in, probably okay. Maybe not like, you know, that's a veteran pilot, but I think if you were listening and I didn't say I was a student pilot, you would have no idea, probably. Especially if you're not like yourself a veteran pilot. So, you know, fly down. Had to circle once before landing at Tucson just because there was some traffic coming in. And as you come in, it's interesting, they vectored me off to the side toward another airport. I could see this airport. I knew this wasn't the right airport, but it was kind of unnerving because I'm heading toward it. And my instructor told me many times, don't land at that airport, you land at this other, at Tucson International. And you know, I'm heading toward it because air traffic control has sent me that way. Then they sort of spin me around and then guide me back in on course to the right airport. Go in, and then as you're coming in, like I knew, both because we had already done it and because I've got the maps and things, I knew the runway that I was landing on was the right runway. I mean, you know, they're like whatever right, 6 right, whatever I don't know the actual number right now, but 6 right, let's just say that. So it's the one on the right side. But as you're coming in, if you don't know what you're looking for from a distance, a taxiway versus a runway are very difficult to distinguish, and doubly so in this, like Tucson International, they have one really big, wide runway with a taxiway right beside it, which looks like 2 runways. So the main runway, the left runway, from a distance looks like the right runway, and the taxiway looks like the left runway. So I knew that wasn't the case, but there's a part of my brain sitting there going like, that's the fucking, Scott, get over there, you're on the wrong one. Luckily, did not listen to that part of me. And I'm coming in, and as you get closer, you start going, okay, I can actually see this is a runway. I'm not like doing something insane. But briefly, I'm sitting there like, is this really the runway? I go in, do a touch and go. That one was actually shockingly, I don't want to say easy, but you know, it was pretty smooth. It was like I knew what I was doing. Go around to Ryan Field. The one thing that does get me is coming in, if I don't quite know the orientation of the runways relative to how I am and the traffic pattern and all this, getting into the pattern. I'm constantly paranoid. It's never happened, but I always am afraid I'm gonna end up going like clockwise when I should be going counterclockwise or vice versa. Again, has never happened, but seems like it would be so easy to do. Like I'm kind of shocked it doesn't happen often. But anyway, do that right, land, and that one was pretty good. Had some issues braking, so I was, you know, I got slowed down and stopped, but the brakes were a little squishy. I think the fluid is low or something. I don't know what was wrong, but definitely not like perfect braking. There's also a thing, and this seems to happen in a lot of the planes that I fly, but the brakes are toe brakes. So you have your heels do the rudder and steering with the front wheel, and then your toes are a brake, and you got left and right brakes. And above the toe brake, there's a bar. And my shoes very often hit that bar. So more times than I care to even think about, I've tried to brake and my foot hits the fucking bar, stopping me from braking. And then there's I mean, it's not like a 30-second, what the fuck is going on? And then you figure it out and then you fix it. It's a moment, but it's a long moment. And you're like, shit. And then I lift my foot and drop it down and push it. But I feel that, and it's like, yeah, it's very freaky when you're landing a fucking plane and you're trying to hit the brakes and there's something stopping you from doing it. But anyway, did it, got off, went to the restaurant. Didn't actually go to the restaurant, but went to the restroom there. Yeah, stopped the plane, went to the restroom, and partly I did this just to have experience with like starting up the plane and feeling like, this is actually a full leg. Go back, start up the plane, go through the process, take off. Shockingly not that bad. Get into Tucson approach. They hand me off to Albuquerque, hand me off to Phoenix, come into to Chandler's airspace. And that one, it worked pretty well. I will say this though, I was at a little bit too much speed. And so, it's something, I don't know if I was just feeling overly confident from the last two landings, which were pretty much okay, or what, but I landed and then instead of like, you land and you kind of flare up to slow yourself down and then you basically drop down. I did this a little bit too much, had a little too much speed, took off and then dropped down again. It was okay, but definitely not my prettiest landing. And kind of was embarrassing because it was like, couldn't this have happened when I was at some other place where nobody knows me? Not that anyone knows me there, but it was just like in my mind. That's how I think. But got down, got off the runway, had again the thing with my shoes hitting the bar, but slid down, pull off. Almost always that makes me miss the first turn that I want to hit, which is annoying, but made it and completed that. That was my first cross-country solo. And the thing about it that's really crazy is, in principle, it's only a matter of complexity, like length and number of stops and number of waypoints, all this kind of stuff, to go from that to flying basically, maybe not quite anywhere, but most places. Certainly any controlled field. And so that was kind of a surreal moment because I'm like, oh shit, I, in principle now, could fly, not quite, but just about anywhere. And I know how to do, you have to go through the weight and balance and all this other shit. There's a lot of stuff, shocking amount of stuff that goes into planning a trip. Annoyingly, most of it is automated now, which, it's annoying because as you're learning, and with good reason, you have to learn how to do it. Not just put it in the computer and have the computer do it for you. But while you're doing it, it's very slow. And not only do we have to do it ourselves, you have to use like a old, fucking slide rule, which is interesting, but you have to use that. The weirdest thing about that, it's gotten to the point where I'm pretty fast with it. Not quite as fast as with a calculator, but pretty fast. But the weird thing about it is that it works. And I know that sounds like a stupid thing to say, but there's something in my mind that, like if you're doing a fuel distance calculation or wind velocity correction calculation, the idea that this weird mechanical computer gives you the right answer, and I think I'm getting to the point where I trust it, but I still, just to validate my numbers, like pull the calculator out, clickety click, and it's like, how the fuck is that right? And again, this is like, I have a PhD in physics. I did pretty well in electromagnetism at the graduate level. Even so, in my mind, like I use magnets a lot and electromagnets and this kind of stuff. Pretty much have a handle on how they work, both quantum mechanically and electrically and all this. Still, there's a part of my monkey brain where you have these two things and you have this invisible force between them, and it just is like magic. Your brain's like, I don't quite, it doesn't make sense. It's magic. It's weird how much, this seems to happen. I mean, I guess basically, like, I'm just kind of speculating here, but you get the impression that your brain has a lot of different things running. And you have the sort of higher level rational stuff, and you have a lot of other shit. And that rational stuff is kind of where we think we are most of the time. And in there, you were like, I totally understand how this works. It makes sense to me, it's no problem. But then that little monkey part, which is a big part, is like, that doesn't make sense, it's magic. It's funny and kind of disturbing how you can have both of those feelings at the same time. And it also makes you understand the insane clown posse thing about magnets being magic. Because, PhD in physics, they still feel magical. You can imagine somebody who has no idea how this shit works. Yeah, I mean, come on, think about it. So anyway, with that, that's in the books. Next week, supposed to be cloudy, so this might get delayed. But I have my first, I've done a night flight, but this is going to be my first cross-country night flight, which is crazy. And then I'm getting really close to, like, almost everything that's left is just review. So I have a stage check and then a bunch of review. And then, even before I do that review, take the written exam, do the review, and then my final flight exam, basically. It's crazy. It's coming up. Not tomorrow. Probably still going to be another couple months, but it's coming, and it's kind of cool. So now that I'm almost to the end of the time that I have allotted to do this, I want to get into the thing that I actually wanted to talk about, which is fashion. So my word today is fashion. And you're like, Scott, you're so fashionable. Why do you even have to talk about fashion? It's just obviously, it carries from the way that I speak and the way that I carry myself, the way that I dress. Very, obviously care about how I look and what I'm wearing and all this kind of stuff. Hopefully you gather that I'm kidding, but I'm only half kidding. I do actually give a shit about how I look. I do give a shit about what I'm wearing. But there are certain things that I find very annoying. And I always think, when I was a kid, my dad, when I was a kid, we went from that like stupidly crazy short, like the shorts that dudes would wear that are like the shorts that women wear now. And then they kind of went down. And when I was in college, they were almost crazy long. That was just, ridiculously long shorts. And now they've been slowly creeping upward again. Another weird thing that's happened is, like, a few years ago, I noticed I'm on ASU's campus and you start seeing women, like 18-year-old, 19-year-old women, and they're wearing kind of pants that my grandma used to wear. Like, literally grandma pants are like in fashion, with the waist that's like hiked up to here. I don't know if it's more comfortable. I assume it's just, style. Everybody's been doing it this way. We're going to do something different, so we're going to take it down. Whatever. I don't give that much of a fuck, but it looks weird. I'm sorry. But anyway, my dad, when I was a kid, really liked those short shorts. I never liked it. I never understood it. He was very into that. And I think it's just like when he was growing up, that was what people wore. And as the longer ones started coming in, at a certain point, whatever's the style becomes the thing you can find. And even if you don't give a fuck about fashion, you're subject to it, because if you want to buy shorts, you can only buy what they're selling. And they're not selling the short shorts anymore that he would like. So he actually had, at a certain point, a shit ton of these short shorts made that he wore the rest of his life. And that was just like his shorts. He had like a uniform of shorts. It was kind of funny. And I used to, when I was a kid, I laughed at it. I almost made fun of it. Now, I like, and I'm sorry, I like the shorts that come down below my knees. I miss those shorts. I have a couple pairs, like I still buy the longest shorts I can get, But the fashion has come up. It's gotten to the point where all of my shorts are, by my standards, short. Now, they're still long for my dad. If he was still around, he would still be wearing his short shorts. But they're not that, they're not where they used to be. And there's something in I don't know, obviously just in my mind, but with the short above my knee, I feel naked. Below my knee, I feel okay. I don't know why. It's where I want them. It's what I'm used to. Can't get comfortable with them the other way. Really want that. And it's a thing that I noticed that, partly it's just a weird symmetry because now I'm seriously thinking about having the long shorts commissioned, and so that I can get the kind that I would like, in a weird kind of symmetry with my dad, but, he went really short. I want to go long. I don't want to go like, ridiculously baggy pants, pirate shorts, or capris or something, but I'd like a little longer, a little more comfortable. And another thing, actually, like I like cargo shorts. Not the most attractive thing, not the most fashionable thing, but I like to have lots of pockets. And I noticed that the pockets that a lot of these things have, like even sometimes the ones that I have on now are actually okay, but often they'll be asymmetric, and you'll have a pocket where it's like, okay, and this includes the ones I'm wearing. If I have my phone in the natural pocket to put a phone, and I sit down, the phone can very easily just fall right out, which is dumb, totally unnecessary. I've had plenty of shorts where you drop the phone in there and there's nothing you can do other than intentionally taking it out. Like, it's not gonna fall out. So many shorts fuck up the pockets. So many shorts have pockets where they have, like, on the right side it's actually a pretty nice pocket, and then on the left side it's like a half-assed pocket. It's like, how you did it once right, how can you not do it right on the other side? So many shorts that I have also just have, like, I don't know, weird things with like the fastener or the zippers, all these kinds of things. I don't get it, don't like it. Really bothers me to the point where, given the resources, I really would like to just start making my own shorts, or commissioning somebody to do it. The one that drives me up the fucking wall is I have so many shorts where I like the shorts, I kind of like the material, it looks nice, but if they get even the slightest bit of water on them, it changes color dramatically. So I go to the restroom, I wash my hands, I do the little flick like this, and now it looks like I've pissed myself. I've got like sprinklets going up and down my shorts. And they're not like little sprinklets that just disappear into the material. It's like I'm wearing gray shorts and then are dark, almost black spots on them where it's wet. And I don't understand how, like, I get not easy. Making, like cutting fabric and stitching it together and making it fit something and be comfortable and all this stuff and look decent is a very non-trivial problem. I do not believe that that's an easy thing that you can just like do. But I do think if you are a company that makes this kind of shit, it's something you can figure out. It's like, it's not rocket surgery, It's not something where you're like trying to land an orbital rocket vertically. It's like a solvable problem, imminently solvable problem. And it's also a problem where once you solve it, you've solved it. You can just keep applying that, and maybe you make tweaks, but that's it. So it's a thing. I hate being subject to fashion in that sense. Another thing that this will be, I think, the last thing that I talk about, but with fashion, when I was younger, I'm sure I've mentioned Oakleys before. Oakley used to be, like, they were always expensive, but they used to be really high quality, good optics, good materials for the most part, especially their metal frames. Very well engineered, nice looking. And then the thing that I really liked about them is that they'd wrap around so you wouldn't have sunlight and shit coming in your sides, and you could get a nice sort of peripheral view of everything. Today, that style still exists, but they've been crapified by Luxottica. So they're shitty. And they've also been taken over somehow. I don't know how this works, but basically the MAGA people have the wraparound Oakleys. That's like their fashion statement. So now if I wear that kind of thing, first off, I'm probably paying a lot of money for something that's crap. And second, I end up looking like a Magan, which I do not really want to look like. So it's annoying. And if you get the normal glasses that everybody else is selling, they're almost all like these aviator kind of things where you have like a flat lens. We have so much technology to make rounded lenses that have great optical properties and don't have any distortion, all this kind of stuff. And yet today you have these flat things that are like things that Benjamin Franklin could have made. I mean, plastic instead of glass, but the same idea. And you're like, come on, what the fuck? I do get like fashion feels the need to sort of change things, but there are things that are changing that are for the better, and there are things that change for the worse, and this is definitely for the worse. I do look forward to, like, one thing that I've recognized as I've gotten older is that, these things ebb and flow, and, the old stuff will come back eventually in some form. It's inevitable. I've lived long enough where I've, like I'm seeing the grandma pants on the teenage women at university. Things come into fashion. They go out of fashion, they come back. I've even seen bell bottoms come back a couple of times. Weird things that don't have any business ever coming back, come back. I'm sure the good stuff will. But with that, I could go on for more, but I'm gonna cut there because I have another meeting that I have to go to. With that, thank you as always for listening or watching. I apologize for the green screen. I apologize for the rambling, and I kind of want to put in a jump cut to apologize for, but if I had one, I would apologize for it. I do care. One thing that I care a lot about is audio quality, which is annoying because the dog's barking out there, for example, or the plane flying over. I'm sure that stuff is getting in a little bit, and yet there's not a lot I can do with it other than multiple takes, or eventually I plan on having a place where I don't have like a window that is acoustically transparent. But this is the last thing that I'm actually going to talk about, but when you're in Europe, all the windows are, pretty much anywhere you go, there are these often 3-pane windows, like big fucking hefty things. When they're closed, they insulate really well, both in terms of heat and sound. They open in ways that, like if you see it, it seems obvious once you see it, like this is how windows should be, but compared to the US, it's like, it just doesn't even seem possible because we have such shitty windows. The one thing they don't have is screens for some reason. So they just have windows open and like bugs can come in. But with the exception of that, their windows are fucking awesome. And I just don't, like here, I live in Phoenix. Now granted, this house is, I think it was built in the 70s, but I'm looking at that window and it's like a single pane of glass. And not only is it a single pane, it's not sealed well at all. Like these things, the ones I'm talking about are sealed really well. This one, you take a thermal camera to it and it's like all around. And the thing is, basically might as well be open practically. And just the difference between that. The other thing they have in Europe on windows, which I know a lot of people don't like, and when I first saw this, I might have thought that it was like a security thing. And as a security thing, it seems like icky. It's like bars on the windows, but they'll have these shutters outside. And the shutter will be outside. You'll have some kind of either electric thing or more often than not a crank. And you can crank it down. And again, from the outside, it looks like you've got, like you're ready for a fucking hurricane or something. But the thing that they do is these are like perfect blackout. So you can crank the thing down and it is black. Like, no light is getting in. Obviously some light is leaking in, but for all intents and purposes of practically, no light is coming through. So you've got the great insulating window, good sound insulation, and the light is contained. Versus what we have, which is fucking worthless as hell. Like, it's shockingly bad how bad our windows are. And we just, you know, I wish that people would just kind of like travel around the world and see the good ideas and go like, hey, why the fuck don't we do that? Why don't we have universal healthcare? Why don't we do these things that other people are doing? And you know, there are certainly probably things that we could share with other people. None come to mind at the moment, but I'm sure that we have things. But yeah, there are so many things that other people do better. And even when people don't do it better, you know, you could go, well, hey, this doesn't work that well, but if you took this and you took that and you mixed them together, you could make something much better. Why not? I wish we did that. I wish that was a thing that people just as a matter of course did. So with that, I really do have to go. Thank you as always for watching or listening, and 再见.